Okay. Let's check this. Hey. All right, let's start this thing.
Go.
Welcome, everybody, to Soccerwise. We are live on Twitch and YouTube. Shockingly, David Goss and Tom Bogert with you here for this episode. We've got a big one coming up for you. We've obviously got midweek MLS action to react to talk about. Tom woke up this morning with a finger on the phone. He is breaking news throughout the day. We're going to react to all of it. We're going to try and get our arms around some of these big ones. Frankie Amaya rumors for a big sale down to Mexico, some other trade rumors, some other transfer things, as well as some injury news in Cincinnati. And then we've got Copa America. I am sports guy today. I've got my Canada shirt on. I've got my Liberty hat on. I will be going to the Liberty game tonight at 7 o'clock, and then I will run to the bar to watch the second half of Argentina against Canada. And we are not on tomorrow, so we're going to talk U.S., Bolivia as well. Floating the idea of maybe doing a live reaction show to that, so shoot me a message if you're interested in that, if you want to be a part of that, if you want us to do that. So we are going to get all of that going as we roll along. Tom, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good, David Goss. How are you feeling?
You look, again, very beachy.
I did the way that I prepped for this show is I was doing the rundown from the beach.
We got to get you. We got to get Wi-Fi down there so we can get you show on the beach.
Nah, too windy. Too windy. It was
fair.
It was so bad the other day. I had to make a phone call, and I was that plebe who put the towel over my head because guys I can't hear you because it's like, and I was like, I hate every second of this.
And you're like, sorry, just tell Neymar I'll call him back to get the report on his next transfer. Paulo in Minnesota says sleeveless. Hell yeah. That's for you, Tom. I'm wearing sleeves for anyone who's not watching. And anyone listening on the podcast,
too.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate the support so far. We hope you're enjoying our coverage. We're going to continue to give you the best coverage of MLS and NWSL. We did our first full NWSL show yesterday with Jordan Angeli. She explained how Angel City was close to their offensive breakout, and they were right there. They scored 3 goals last night on her broadcast. So that's the type of coverage you're getting. We talked about Seattle, their new ownership as Sounders take over as the managing owner of that group. So that's been really interesting, and it was a lot of fun chatting NWSL yesterday. And we've got all your MLS chat here today. So you can go to the Patreon. It is up. It is live. Go to the Patreon, and you can be a part of the Discord conversation. You can be a part of the mailbag. So next Monday or Sunday evening, potentially, I'm going to do my weekend reaction show. That's going to be built out of all questions we have from the mailbag. We already have some we've pulled into today's show that we really like. So you can go be a part of that. And we are lining up some depth charts for you to be able to access there, as well as our first happy hour episode, which will be exclusive to Patreon subscribers. So go over there, get involved, get connected, and you get the type of coverage like this. We are the only show that opens with a mea culpa. I went on a rant about how Shaqiri doesn't start for Switzerland. He will never play for Switzerland in this Euros. If you thought he was going to play well and boost his transfer value, you were wrong. Chicago Fire and Shaqiri. And then Shaqiri scores the goal of the tournament. 12 minutes into that game? So there you go. I would like to say you're welcome, like I inspired him. But either way, I am here to issue a mea culpa on this one. And because of that, I will accept relegation into the second round, which means Yorgis Giacomakis could join the show because that's the type of pressure he needs, Tom. That's what he needs to really feel alive.
There's just so many problems with the quote that Giacomakis gave. Look, if he thinks Liga MX is better than MLS. And I'd be curious if somebody asked him this 6 months ago, or if Atlanta gave him a new contract, what the answer would have been. But that's totally fair. I totally get it. But his reasoning here, talking about people don't care if you lose, which is, the dog whistle for Pro Rel. Well, Mexico doesn't have Pro Rel. And then it's like, well, too many teams make the playoffs. And it's like, well, Mexico also has a very similar ratio of teams that make the playoffs. And also, they have 2 playoffs. They don't have 1 playoffs. They have 2 playoffs. And they also do the Leagues Cup. So it's just a really weird, like, I'm sure he was trying to ingratiate himself with the fans as well. Like, just a little layup at the opening press conference, but just a lot of questionable sourcing there from Yorgos Giacomakis. We could press holes in that. Peer-reviewed article, we could put some holes in that.
It is 10 of 18 teams in Liga MX make the playoffs twice a year. Reminder. Yeah. So that's a little over 55%. In MLS, it's 14 of 29. Sorry, 16 of 29. What? 18 of 29?
They call it the play-in, but
I can't even get there, which is like 65, 66%. So more teams in MLS, but you only get one shot at it a year. So you are right. You're Giacomakis. That one team difference is the big difference between two soccer cultures. And we're going to see how that plays out in Copa America as these nations' national teams go into that tournament, as well as, of course, Leagues Cup coming up once again. So I think it's going to be fun to see Giacomakis in that. I think there's going to be a lot of teams aiming for him and knowing a decent amount about him. Let's talk MLS midweek as we get into all of this news that we want to talk about. 51 goals on Wednesday night, third most in a match day in MLS history. That is a meaningless stat. We add a new team every year. It's just based off when they play and how the match days go together. So congratulations on that. But it was wild. Tom, I know you were locked in, just like goal after goal after goal across the league. It is one of those days where it's fun when they're all together, but it's also chaos. And I enjoy the chaos at moments. It's got like an NCAA tournament vibe, but there's like no way you can track everything that's going on across all these games.
Yeah, that's why it's always at the beginning of the year. I'm like, when you're really trying to learn more and more about a bunch of teams, and you take the information that you saw in preseason or heard in preseason and your preconceived notion. So I really try to have 3 screens on 3 different games and try to make the most and really rotate heavy in the first couple of weeks. Right now, it's about surviving and advancing and keeping up. MLS 360 is an absolute must now on one of my 3 screens. Like, again, early in the season, like, and I like that show. I love the host. I love the idea of the whip around stuff. But early in the season, I'm like, I need to like see what these teams are doing outside of highlights. But like when you get to like a third of the way through the season, I've got 360 on one of the TVs all the time, and that was wonderful to have last week. It's like I'm seeing like a highlight on Twitter before they even get to it on 360 because there was so many other goals they had to get to first, and it's just out of control. It was a really fun night yesterday, and it's good when the midweek fixtures are specifically like this rather than just a Saturday, because you need some midweek fun, and it fuels the MLS After Dark, the MLS chaos narrative, particularly when it's on a Wednesday rather than a Saturday. It just hits different on a Wednesday.
And the convenience is, right now, oddly, instead of all of the players missing on midweeks being attacking players, they were all defenders. I don't think a single team started their first team back line, and some teams didn't even start a center.
I was going to say, is there a first team back line at this, like with all the international call-ups? Like,
exactly. And
get in with it. Guys, if you could do 10 minutes at right back, I think they need you.
I think there is a genuine opportunity to get into an MLS team right now as a short-term loan for a defender. That might be our first Soccerwise feature that we put together, is our grind back into the MLS right. situation. It was wild, and not only was it wild, but it was like every single team, big mistakes in the back, huge openings, and so it made it more entertaining. I think Dallas would have beaten Minnesota anyway, probably a 2-1 on a normal day, so it was 5-3. No difference. It's still a slight margin victory in that type of game. We'll dig into that one, but let's start with Kei Kamara. Equalizing goal late off the bench for LAFC. Header on the far post. That's what he's there for. It's 145th goal for him. He ties Landon Donovan for second all-time on the goal-scoring list. He is behind, of course, Chris Wondolowski, who is at 171. Probably not going to catch him, but maybe. So congrats to Kai. It's fun to see him do his thing once again. He continues to roll through. And we got the question in the Discord immediately saying, if Kai's going to continue to chase this trophy or chase this record, you know he's going to move teams because that's what he does. Where do you want to see him next? And I love this question. Do you have any ideas?
God, I love this question too, because on one hand, I just want to say phenomenal by Kei Kamara. I know we've waited a little while for this goal to come. He's been one away for dating back to last season with Chicago. So I'm really happy for him, one of the absolute legends of this league. But that's all well and good to say. To spin it forward and say, okay, what should be his next team is absolute class. It'd be fun if he could have a little FC Cincinnati reunion as he was there in the expansion draft, if you remember, FC Cincinnati legend coming back to actually put on the jersey. That or San Diego would be fun, just add it to him and Shuki and a little expansion club, and trying to keep up with new clubs with new jerseys for him. Just continue to expand that record.
And then we'll never play for San Diego based off this thing. The one that shocks me that he's never played for is Seattle, because Seattle is big. Like, if you're an MLS vet and you want to be on the back end of our roster, we don't care. You've played in this league. We know who you are. Great. Come on in and be the Kellen Rose of the world, the Will Bruins of the world. They've done it time and time again. That's also a Garth Lagerwey thing, so that puts Atlanta back in the conversation.
Ooh.
Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to break the internet right here. Peter Vermees leaves Kansas City. Wherever he goes next, that's where Kei Kamara goes. There's a number of openings, and that is the future for both him and Kai. I'm sure SKC fans will have many thoughts in there, some positive, some negative. So let us know what you think on that one. Where do you think Kei Kamara ends up? Let's go into the craziest game of the day. FC Cincinnati against Philly. Philly comes back from 1 goal down 3 separate times before Lucho Acosta finishes it off. Tom, it's another game back-to-back here where Lucho puts in an MVP performance and is carrying Cincinnati into the Supporters Shield conversation when not a lot of other people are stepping up with him.
Lucho Acosta is out of his goddamn mind. He is so much fun to watch. I'm running out of superlatives. I tweeted something to pretty much say that, like, this is a real conversation that happens with sources and people across the league. Instead of just saying best player, because I think it's disingenuous to call anything a best player when Messi's there. I was like, I thought I was giving a big compliment to Lucho, saying that, like, for me, like, it's clear he's the second best player in the league. And then a few people were like, why did you shoehorn Messi into this? I was like, well, if you call him the best player in the league, it's easy to point out, well, he's Argentinian, and one of them is currently with Argentina at the Copa America. And I was like, I didn't think this was a hot take. I thought this was a compliment or whatever. But, like, I don't have anything else to say. He's insane. Should be one of the favorites right now for MVP again after winning it last year. He is a one-man attack. He's been involved in like 2/3 of their goals. He's like Barrio, what a Freudian slip there. Luca Oriano is stepped up really well. Kevin Kelsey stepped up a bit, but like all of this runs through Lucho. Without Lucho, like this team isn't good. Like they'd be struggling to score 1 goal a game.
Yeah,
he's a one-man show, and for one of the best teams in the league, who's going to have a new look back line at least for the interim, particularly with Miazga out and Miles Robinson gone for Copa America. And I didn't think that this team was capable of scoring 4 goals in a shootout like this. But Lucho Acosta was like, yeah, sure, I can do that too. Don't worry.
Kelsey barely even touches the first one. It's like the scooped ball from Lucho that Kelsey gets a hair on, which is enough to sort of redirect it. But like, there's a decent chance that one's just bouncing in on its own. And as you said, he's a one-man attack. He drops in, he picks up the ball, he plays big switches to change the point of attack, or he starts to attack from zone 14. Plays 1-2s, gets everyone open, and this is a team that sold a DP center forward last year, hasn't genuinely replaced him because Bupenza is not a part of this team. Lost Brandon Vasquez, still continuing to perform. Barriel, an all-star, borderline best 11, best wing back in the league. He's gone, and yet they've maintained here at the top of the East purely because of him. I will say I think Oriano's midfield chip of the keeper is better than Chicho's. I think it's the best of the year. Oh, you agree?
He fired it like just under the crossbar. Like that
the
thing.
Keeper's
like,
not really off his line. It
was like that didn't roll in.
Missile.
Yeah, that was. And dude, the way that he's able to just like obviously he needed a little bit of a wind up, but like not really. That looked like he was just gonna play a big switch, and he just banged one from midfield. That was wild. I'm with you there. I think that was better than Chicho's.
And I think Jake and Taylor talked about it for a while on the broadcast, but like he is coming good very quickly. It felt like, okay, you lose Barrial. It took Barrial years to settle in, and obviously
new leadership, all that stuff. Like they turned him into what he is. Like, and obviously credit to Alvaro Barrial like as well. Not to be dismissive there, but like they inherited a different player and really made the best out of him. And as you say with Oriano, it took a little while and even quicker.
Right. It's quicker and it needed to be. And this is sort of the problem we're going to talk about with Frankie Amaya of like replacements take time. And so what's the step back on the way to step forward? This is so quick for Cincinnati that it's barely even a blip. And he might be better as they go forward or have a higher ceiling in what he can add to this team. Let's talk backline, though. We got a tweet from Jack Emery who says, I know Tom was watching that FC Philly match. It had everything. I wanted to hear you discuss it on Soccerwise. Can FC Cincinnati keep it up if Miazga is out long term? Does his injury change the July window plans for them? And what can Lucho not do? So we appreciate, first of all, everyone tweet us as you're watching games, and I will throw them into the rundown. Tom, give us the update on Miazga.
Yeah, Matt Miazga, this is a long-term injury. What the discussions are when I'm talking to sources is I hope it's not season-ending. And there is optimism that it won't be season-ending, but Miazga still needs to get surgery. They're going through that process now. And the hope, the best-case scenario, is surgery, rehab, and he's back at some point before the end of the season and playoffs. But I want this to be known, this is not a week's thing. This is a month's thing, unless they found another doctor that actually has a different opinion. But right now, it's whether or not they need to use a season-ending injured list and put him there. But as far as I know, the optimism is that they're going to try to not do that, and so that Miazga can come back for the end of the season in playoffs. But this is a month's injury, not a week's injury.
This is brutal because Miles Robinson is out with the U.S. national team for Copa America, so that's your first option up. Now, they did add Miles this offseason. So long-term for the year, they are able to cover in a way that I don't think they could have last year, and I think we saw in the playoffs when Miazga was suspended that they were not as strong defensively. Miles is more experienced to do that for them. Kip Keller played okay in this game. He went out injured in the end of this game. They ended up finishing with Alvis Powell, DeAndre Yedlin, and Ian Murphy as their three center backs. This is a worrying moment, and this is where it comes down to Lucho. They are going to have to score goals to stay in the conversation for Supporter Shield because they are not going to be able to shut teams out with the way this is set up. The question on Twitter, does this change FC Cincinnati's summer? Do you see them having the space or ability to go get a legitimate center back?
So that's the thing here. I don't think it's going to change their plans, but they definitely have to have the discussions of, do we need to put him on season-ending injured list? Because they don't have the roster space, the salary cap space, to make a significant add at center back without that happening. And even that, the salary cap relief won't be exactly 1-for-1. Like, you're not going to get Max Tamslot back or whatever from Miazga. But I think it's more valuable. Again, like this is all extremely fluid. And it will be fluid for the next month or whatever as they see how the surgery goes, how his rehab goes. But for me, it's more valuable that if there's a realistic chance that Miazga can come back, particularly by the end of the season and have some games before the playoffs, I think that's more valuable than, hey, let's try to get somebody on $200,000 in the senior roster spot for Matt Miazga. Yeah. But the only way that this sizably changes their summer plans is if they put him on season-ending injury list. If they don't, and again, I don't think that they would make that decision. They have the luxury of time. The transfer window doesn't open for another month, and then it'll be open for a month after that. So they have some time before they need to do that. But like I think it's obvious that they're going to try to bring in another body in the back, but something like veteran minimum or supplemental roster, right? Rather than say, oh, we're bringing in a starting caliber player. Like this is going to rely a whole lot on Miles Robinson.
It is tough for Cincinnati. It felt like an embarrassment of riches at the back, like 4 months ago when they brought Miles in.
No, like 10 days ago.
Yeah,
like, it completely changed. Like you said, not only with so Miles, like obviously is gone on international duty, and then Miazga gets hurt, kind of like, it wasn't something that was building. And then, as you say, Kip Keller, they still have Keller, Haglund, and Robinson, and Murphy. Like if those are your four, you can really get by. But like you said, that makes it really dicey when games are coming thick and fast in the summer. And then what if Murphy's out for a bit, or what if Kip Keller's out for a bit, or like whatever. Like at any time, if there's another prolonged absence, it gets real thin, real fast.
Yedlin, not one of those guys that you really want to play wide center back as a fullback. I think Alvis Powell. I was surprised they pushed Yedlin inside first when Powell came on, and then they were forced to play both of them at center back.
Bro, what about Yuya Kubo? He could play everywhere.
He could play everywhere. Yeah, he drew a penalty in this one. He did a good job once again. He's carrying this team. He's carrying this
awesome.
team on his back.
I love Yuya Kubo. What another positive story from this group, that this guy's become indispensable. And you get credit to the coaching staff in the front office for not just being like, oh, he was signed as a DP forward. And now he's a guy who could play as a box-to-box midfielder, as some sort of a 10, as a forward, as either wingback. And again, if you tell me that they're going to throw him out for 30 minutes at right side center back and just play the old Andy Nahara role, I'd be like, you know what? I believe it until he proves that he can't. Maybe he'll be backup goalie as well. Who knows?
Andy Nahara might have to open up his messages to see if FC Cincinnati's trying to get in there. Steven Betashore might be in the conversation. AJ De La Garza just played at TSD. I think all these guys might be in the convo for this FC Cincinnati squad, trying to look for all the names they can to fill in there. But huge news for them, huge news in the Supporters Shield race as well as in the Eastern Conference. Let's stay in the East. Let's talk a little history. Julian Hall, equalizing goal off the bench in Montreal, 2-2 tie for Red Bulls. He is the second youngest goal scorer in MLS history behind, do you know?
Freddie Adu.
Yeah, it's always Freddie Adu. We got to get
you put it in the rundown. That would have been my guess, but I didn't know for sure.
You're not supposed to look at the rundown. That's not what it's there for. It's there so that you have no idea what's going on. It's always Freddie Adu when you do like age stuff in MLS.
Yeah.
So at some point, someone's gonna have to beat one of his records just so there's one wrinkle in there.
Cavan already did with the youngest to sign his contract, right? Or no, he'd be the first person to debut at 14 years old, something like that. It's
Freddie was 14 because he was 14 when he scored as well. So this is groundbreaking stuff right now that we're doing. This is high quality stuff. Julian Hall is someone we've talked about a lot, though. Tom, we talked about it last year when he was not eligible because of his age and his birthday and all of that. Exciting for Red Bulls to get him on the field. Exciting for him to score. And this is sort of who the Red Bulls want to be. And this is a big opportunity for them to push someone through at a young age like this and sort of turn to other prospects and say, this can be you. Like, this is the plan, and this is our future. And we've heard Sandro Schwartz just be completely committed to him. So a big moment for him, but not a great morning for Red Bull fans. You have rattled Red Bull fandom to its core because you hate New Jersey, specifically Tom Bogert. Let me make sure that I have that lower third up. Tom Bogert live on Soccerwise hates New Jersey. Give us the Frankie Amaya news and sort of what you're hearing.
Yeah, Toluca in Liga MX is very close to a deal to sign. Frankie Amaya from the New York Red Bulls. I'm told that deal will be around $4 million, so it's in like the Aiden Morris to Middlesbrough range. It's not totally finalized or totally done yet because I'm told the plan is Frankie Amaya is playing for the Red Bulls on Saturday. But then I don't know if that would be his last game or not, but the Liga MX season starts in early July, so I imagine that Toluca want this to happen as soon as possible. But again, for all intents and purposes, this deal is just about done.
He did not start on Wednesday night. He came off the bench for Red Bulls. What's your reaction to this? Because I have like 87 different thoughts in 87 different directions. When you heard this, when you digested this for the first time, what did you make of it?
It's a good question. For me, the departure isn't surprising because he's wanted a new contract. Nothing has been contentious between club and the players camp. It's more like, hey, like we respect it if you don't want to give the salary that we're asking for, the contract we want. Like, that's totally fine. You got to do what you got to do. But on that, like, you can't block any moves for him because there are teams that would. Like, that's what they believe. So I thought that I could see a trade happening. I thought I could see something in Europe to like a smaller team or like a smaller league. So Liga MX is a little bit of a surprise for me. But with the money that some of these teams are putting in, like, again, Kei Kamara was around $4 million or whatever it was from San Jose, Chivas. Like, Daniel Rios got a decent fee from, like, a $1 million fee from Charlotte to Chivas. Like, the money coming from Mexico, so if the players are into it, I can see it happening. And one more kind of piece of background, Frankie Amaya's girlfriend plays professional soccer in Mexico. So that's probably something that helps pull here, too. So it's a specific one. It's unique. But, like, the more you unpack it, it's like, okay, that makes sense. But overall, my first thought was, I'm not surprised he's leaving this summer.
Yeah, I think all of that makes sense. I believe his deal's up this year. He has an option. There's a club option for next year, but you have to have him play out his deal at that point. You get nothing for him. Yeah. Hence why most teams try and get the deal done before that happens. This is also was sort of the conversation with Cincinnati. He wanted a bigger deal. He wanted a place he thought was a higher stepping stone, and they were forced to trade him at a time when he was their only asset because he didn't want to play there and ended up at New York Red Bulls. My first reaction, and the one I come back to and the one I fall on, is $4 million for him is a great deal. Has not grown to the level I thought he would at Red Bulls. When you watch him in this team, when you look at the numbers, he is middle of the road right now in Major League Soccer in this position. He's not elite at anything. And I would add, I think the Red Bull system is set up in a way where a lot of guys can play that position for them and do it okay. You look at Sean Davis and what he did and moving on and being fine in Nashville, but not blowing the doors off. You look at what Peter Stroud did early in the year, and I know you tweeted out that this is part of the conversation. I thought he was phenomenal. It was in a 3-man midfield at the time. They were playing him, Edelman, and Amaya while they figured out their attacking pieces early on. But I think he can do the job in this spot. And if you're going to get $4 million and you send him out of the league so you don't have to worry about him improving the quality of a team that is a rival, it feels like a no-brainer, even though Emil Forsberg's 32 years old. This is the best you've been in years, and it's a half step back in the middle of that, which is not what Red Bull fans want to see.
Yeah, I agree with that. Particularly that last point, I think, is an important one. This talking to sources about the Red Bulls' plans, like they realize they want to be in a win now moment because, like you said, that it hasn't really been like that. It's always been like they sell Christian Castros midseason, or hey, we're gonna sign a 20-year-old or 21-year-old. So again, it's really good that they went out and got Forsberg. Everybody I've talked to says that they're working, that they want to sign a DP forward this year as well. Frankie Amaya, like, he helps you a whole lot in the endeavor to winning and being a better team this year. What's the likelihood that they're going to go back in the market and sign a midfielder? That's the idea. And maybe they sign somebody better than Frankie Amaya, but also maybe not. And it's more likely the maybe not side, particularly over the next 4 or 5 months when the team is trying to be pushing for the Shield race, for Leagues Cup, and for the playoffs. Yeah. So on that front, I would understand fans being a little upset. Do I have the read wrong? I think that he's a fan favorite. I believe that his stock is pretty high among supporters, so that's not going to be helpful either. And I say that because my sister and brother-in-law are Red Bull fans, and they love him. When I was talking to them about this today, they were very upset to hear it.
You're ruining family group chats too.
I'm basing that off of that, but I feel pretty confident that the Red Bulls fans like him. So yeah, if I'm a fan, I'm definitely wait and see. And it definitely hurts to lose Frankie Amaya. But as you say, on the business side of things, both for club and probably for player, this is a positive move and not a deal that you could guarantee would be here in December, right?
We have someone in the Twitch chat who said that he'd argue that that Amaya is more important to the Red Bulls than what I'm saying, especially the way he fits into his team. I think a lot of that's fair, but I think a lot of that is the system. And I thought Amaya would elevate things in that he fits the system perfectly. He covers a ton of ground. He's clean with his first touch. He can help you press, but also push into the attack. He has not affected the attack at any level that I thought he could. And if it's about winning the ball back and covering ground in midfield, I don't think there's any scouting system and data set in the world better than Red Bulls to find the next guy who can do that. And they've proven that. That's my point, is like over the last 5 to 8 years, they have proven the ability to find players who can fit specifically in central midfield. They do not prove that they can fill every spot, but center back and central midfield have been successes for them. We talked about Peter Stroud, who's already in the team. He got hurt on April 15th, had surgery on April 16th, has not played since. So it's not an immediate one, but if you can get him back over the course of this summer and obviously international break and Leagues Cup coming up, if you can have him settled in next to Edelman, I don't think you're taking a huge step back while you go out and find that replacement. I also, and this is going to be my deep cut that I'm going to do, Audrey Mehmeti, who is 15 years old, starting on Red Bulls 2, I believe is the top prospect at his age in the entire league. He is for sure the top prospect coming out of Red Bulls since Tyler Adams. Different player.
Yep.
Both defensive midfielders. So in theory, if you gave Amaya the big deal, at some point you don't want him starting over the next few years because you want Mehmeti in that spot. And if Edelman's still there, now you've got 3. I'm just saying I can understand all the pieces of this, except for the fact that if you're a Red Bull fan, you've been waiting for a win now moment, and this does not exactly fit that timeline.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I agree. Like, scouts I talked to, they said the same line to me. There's like, this is the best prospect that's coming out of the Red Bulls Academy since Tyler Adams. And, like, Daniel Edelman, my God, I'm just messing up names. Daniel Edelman is a very good professional, US U20s captain. He's a very good player. The people that I've talked to said, Mehmeti is going to surpass what he is.
100%.
And that's to say the positivity around Mehmeti rather than something negative on Daniel Edelman. So I agree with all of that, except he's 15 years old, not making this transfer right now. Will he play 2,000 minutes as a 16-year-old? Probably not. So I think that's a misnomer in this, but I do think it's important to point out that, like, hey, they got a big talent coming, and they've proven year over year, like, they don't want to block the top talents. And we go back to Julian Hall. They allowed him to win minutes. Like Sandro Schwarz, after he either had his second game of the season or season debut a couple months ago, it was like, yeah, like he's on the field because he earned it. And we're going to, we don't care about age. If you train well, you're going to get put on the bench. You're going to have a chance. He'll be put on the bench only when the New Jersey child labor laws allow him to be put on the bench before he turns 16. And then once you
New Jersey again.
once you get around those child labor. By the way, where were those child labor laws when I was 14 and 15? Because I don't remember being told that I couldn't work past 8 p.m. because that was certainly not the case. I'll tell you that right now. But this is a team that from sporting director, from the club philosophy down through the coaching staff, they will play these young players. So when Mehmeti is ready, and I'd be surprised if they don't sign him to a homegrown deal before long, when he's ready to make the bench, he's going to make the bench. And when he's ready in his development to start games, he will. And when he's ready that they think he can be the regular starter, he will be. So I'd be shocked if that's 16 or whatever, right? And this would be directly related to Frankie Amaya, but that's definitely something to have on the radar.
So big news, as you sort of rolled through at the beginning, a continued flow of players from MLS to Liga MX, as well as in the other direction. Like, this is becoming a really strong pathway for both leagues. I think Leagues Cup only makes it easier in that you see those players against your competition more consistently. You get to know each other, as well as those players get to experience the different atmospheres and deciding what they want. These are numbers, you rolled through it, Cade Cowell, Daniel Rios is one, that you're not getting from Europe for these players. Yeah. So I think that's the other side of it, is like, if Toluca is saying this is the move, this number probably doesn't come back for Frankie Amaya. So you do it now and you figure it out over the next little bit. So a big move, big potential there for
Except
him.
You're calling it a rumor. I just saw the lower third here. You're calling it a rumor.
Should I not?
It hurts. It's me. It's not a rumor.
Well, what's the
You're
term
looking at me.
What's the term that I use? News?
Scoop, report, news. Yeah. Do you trust me, David Goss? Do you believe me?
I trust you. I just listen.
Are you sure?
I don't live in the transfer room space. I'm not a transfer room, so I don't know what terms we use. I'm just, a normal person. I took down the lower third, though, just to make you feel better, because I felt bad. Also, we're moving on to the next topic. Let's spread a little love to RSL. 4-3 win over SKC. You want to talk Andres Gomez. I always want to talk Andres Gomez. He was in my top 3 young players on Monday's weekend review episode when I was asked that question by Charlie Fiction. And Tom, you were all over it last night as he scored 2 goals, including a second one that was a chip at full speed on a keeper who was still up coming out, and he still dips it under the crossbar.
Andres Gomez has quietly taken the leap this year, and it's been so much fun to watch. Correctly, Chicho Arango is getting most of the headlines and most of the love when it comes to this RSL attack. But the reason why this attack is so special is not Lucho Costa is a one-man show. Again, Oriano, Kevin Kelsey doing their parts. But they don't have somebody playing the way that Carlos Gomez is for Real Salt Lake. He's up to 10 goals and 7 assists in 1,400 minutes. That's elite for a 21 or whatever-year-old winger. He was super highly rated when they signed him. His dynamic athleticism and technical dribbling ability jumped off the screen from the beginning. He had a lot of moments where it was like, oh my God, if this kid puts it together, he's going to be special. But we've seen plenty of athletic wingers in MLS that don't learn how to not dribble the ball out of bounds or take a big touch on the end line. Or, again, in the case of Cade Cowell, just never develop the final product that we all thought and hoped that he would. This season, Andres Gomez is doing that. And he is a legitimate second banana to Chicho Arango, which makes it even easier for Diego Luna is probably overqualified if you call him the third option in the attack. But that's what makes this attack so special is because of the leap that Andres Gomez is taking.
Check that lower third for you. Report. Goss Theorem, Andres Gomez. I made that myself while you were talking. If you're not watching live,
I'm not seeing that on YouTube.
You're not going to see the lower thirds. I apologize for that.
Oh.
You can always watch us live, 2 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, or listen to us as a podcast. We love that as well on your own time. You're right. He's taken this leap. He's efficient in his movements. The thing I say about him is he attacks 100% of the time. And so it doesn't come off every time, but he's always putting defenders on their heels. Even that second goal that I talked about with the chip, he picks up a loose 50-50 ball off a deflected pass where everyone else has stopped playing. Everyone else looks around saying who's going to step, and Gomez has already picked up the ball and he's gone. And that's a microcosm moment of just what he's like always. Luna had 2 assists in this game, like you said, and he should have had a goal. Him and Gomez linked up, Gomez played him across. Luna had his shot saved by Amelia and then missed the rebound that came straight at him. But like, that's another young player in this team. Barajas got to start in this game. Gavin Beavers made a PK save. This is all the dream situation for RSL, which is they're competitive and they still have that future and they want to be a selling team. They want to have that as part of their style and part of their identity. And they're doing it all at a really high level. Crooks comes off the bench and scores a goal for them. I don't know that he's a starter when fully healthy with this team because of how well these young guys are playing. And I think Gomez is the biggest one. You win games when Chicho doesn't start, like that's because of Andres Gomez. And that's huge for RSL going down the stretch this season. Let's talk a little Rapids St. Louis. Georgi Mihailovic, a hat trick, I believe 7 goals on the season. It was a gift from Berkey in some ways. The second goal was Berkey throwing it out, trying to get play started quickly. But it's not an easy finish.
It wasn't an easy first touch or an easy finish.
It wasn't.
I was that came up like I was looking at another screen and I saw him wheeling away in celebration and I could hear the commentators going, "Oh my God, Berkey's gonna want that." Like it was. When I was like waiting for the replay, I thought that Mihailovic was like walking behind him and he put the ball down. That was an excellent defensive play. Obviously, Berkey needs to do much, much better, but that was excellent from Georgi Mihailovic.
If you haven't seen it, Georgie's sprinting back to cover defensively, and Berkey tries to throw it long. He throws it too low, I think is the problem. And Mihailovic, while facing away, takes his first touch clean with the outside of his foot off the throw that was just chucked at him. And then on his second touch, he hits it with the inside of his left, curls it around the defenders. There are multiple defenders in the way, and Berkey's still in the middle of the goal, on the ground a little bit for the second goal, gets a PK for the third. I talked about it early in the season. I thought that there was a ton of rust with these guys because they just hadn't played. When you look at the Vines and Georgi Mihailovic's and Zach Steffens of the world, like that's why they're in Colorado. And they have slowly come along. This was one of the games, though, where you saw Chris's tactics, which is all of St. Louis's mistakes were deep in their half. They led directly to Colorado chances because Colorado plays on the front foot, including the opening goal, literally being a throw-in into the box. But for St. Louis, it's like you make a mistake, it's not a middle third where Colorado had played most of last year. It's in the defensive third, and he gets the goal. Let's talk St. Louis, though, for a second here. Matt Baker, who covers this team very well on Twitter, put out that Sam Adeniran is involved in current transfer and trade talks per Bradley Carnell, and explaining why he was left off the roster for this game. This is a huge turnaround. Adeniran last year, 11 starts, 8 goals, 1 assist. This year, only 4 starts, 2 goals, 1 assist. Last year, he looked like a linchpin type player, and now we're getting into the Aziel Jackson conversation of this is a guy who might not be on the team anymore come the end of the window.
Yeah, his contract's up at the end of the season, and this has been the story of Sam Adeniran's 2024. He was left off, I forget if it was 1 or 2 matchday rosters, and Bradley Carnell was like, his head's not right kind of thing. Like, this has all been kind of transfer speculation. I've been trying to get some more details. I haven't gotten anything yet on this situation. But what I will say is you don't hold a player out because the Seattle Sounders called and said, "Hey, how much is Sam Adeniran?" You don't hold a player out because a couple scouts from a European club came and watched him and a preliminary bid was made. You hold a player out when you're like, this deal's about to get done. And I'm told that nothing is done, but I think that I'm being downplayed a little bit by the folks I'm talking to because, again, like, even if there was negotiations, like early talks, if they were going back and forth, or they don't hold a player out unless something is very close and they expect it to get done. So I'd be now surprised if he plays again for St. Louis, but maybe something falls apart. But that's how I view this. And as you said, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that they weren't able to drag this out a little bit longer. And like same thing with AZ Jackson, that like transfer window isn't open for another month. This team is not in a position where they can give up points. They need everything that they can get while they try to hold on for Cedric Teuchert and Marcel Hartl to debut and be within this team. And again, Hartl, they're very confident that deal's going to get done, but again, nothing's become official yet. But again, I spent the last couple shows saying how impressed I was with what they're doing this summer and how they're reloading. And then there's a couple confusing ones with Jackson leaving and now Adeniran halfway out the door.
12th right now in the Western Conference. And I think the confusing part with this team is like they're a young team. It's going to be hard to get that academy up and running. They found these bridge players. I talk about this all the time of like, as you're trying to get that going, can you find young players that can fit in? They did that. And they're the ones who were putting out the news being like, everyone in the world wants these players. And now all of a sudden it feels like this might be the second one that potentially leaves for borderline nothing. on them in the middle of a tough run when they need players to be a part of their group. So it's another confusing one, I think, as you say, for this St. Louis team. All right, FC Dallas, 5-3 winners. I mentioned it off the top. Petar Musa. Is this your team to watch now, Tom? Did they jump up your watchability rankings? Are you rewriting the art? Was it an article?
It
last
was
week or a video?
It was an article. Yeah.
Okay. Are you rewriting the article? Are you in the mines rewriting the article?
I did say in that blurb, I was like, kind of, and it was the same thing with Nashville as well. Like, we'll see what the new coach stuff brings. Like, this, like, they played, like, again, they wildly overperformed their expected goals. This is what happens with the air quote new manager bump. A lot of it happens just regressing to the mean. But like, I love the way they played. They seemed more on the front foot. They have 7 goals in 2 games under Peter Lucine after, I believe, 17 goals in 17 games or whatever before him. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. Peter Musa, hat trick. Guess what? This is what $10 million on a Croatian borderline international gets you, right? This is what happens when Jesus Ferreira is starting and gets to get forward more. This is what happens when you prioritize verticality and not just going sideways all the time. So I am like, Dallas had fallen. Like, I use those watchability rankings. That idea, hat tip to Zach Lowe and Bill Simmons from Grantland back in the day, then ESPN. Like, that's kind of where it came from, like the original nuggets. But then, like, I turned it into an article, and I wrote that because I find myself on Saturday nights, all right, like, who do I want to watch? And I was 100%. Like, oh, this is probably an interesting way to spin it into an article. And well and truly, Dallas were so far down that, like, I was like, dude, I don't, like, it's like them in Chicago, and I was just like, Nashville, I was like, some of these teams, man, I don't have any juice for. And, like, I need to watch them every so often to make sure that I'm watching everything from every team so that my takes are fresh and my opinions are all set. But, like, damn, like, I really don't feel like watching Dallas. Now, I'm going to be, like, next week, I'm going to be, all right, like, let's see what they got. Let's see if they can build off this.
Kamunga, I thought this was one of his best games, maybe of the year. And that was a guy that had really fallen apart under Nico Estevez and has a ton of potential. So that was exciting to see as well. All right, that's our MLS chat for the show because Copa America starts tonight. I've got my Canada shirt on. I am so excited for this. Obviously, Euros has been a blast. We're going to cover Canada and the U.S. here on this show a ton over the next few weeks. And then after Copa America is over, don't worry, we'll be laser focused on MLS and NWSL and all those things going on. And we've got some messages about USL. We will sprinkle in as much as we can. We've got U.S. Open Cup as well, Leagues Cup. So a ton to talk about. But right now we're going international. Let's start with Canada because they play in the debut. We'll talk U.S. in a little bit because we won't be on again until they play Bolivia on Sunday. It's the first ever Copa America appearance for Canada here in Group A. They pulled out in 2001. I don't know why. I just read it in articles. I put it in the rundown and I said it. May not even be true. And then they didn't qualify in 2016 for the Centenario because CONCACAF teams had to qualify for that. And they were not one of them. That's how bad this team was 8 years ago. Like, that is the reality, which was they had very little chance of getting into that tournament. And now 8 years on, they've played in a World Cup. They are going to be a part of the host. Jesse Marsch taking over. This will be his 3rd match as manager of this team. And it will be in a competitive match against the reigning World Cup champions in front of 65,000, let's say 63,000 Argentine fans and 2,000 Canadian fans, because that's my assumption of what those numbers will look like at Mercedes-Benz. I've been to Argentina games in Russia that felt like you were in Buenos Aires. I can only imagine what Atlanta is going to look like a little bit later tonight. The game's 8 p.m. Eastern time if you're listening to this one. Before it, Alphonso Davies named captain by Jesse Marsch. A young player, but clearly the face of this generation. He was the one who spoke at the bid for the U.S., Canada, and Mexico years ago, talking about being a refugee, coming to Canada, what it meant to him. And he is, I think, already club-wise, the greatest player in Canadian national or Canadian history with what he's done in Champions League and the rumors around Real Madrid. But unlocking him is key for this team. And Jesse Marsch has said he will play left back in this tournament. He will play left back for this team. We saw John Herdman push him higher up the field to try and get him involved more often and let him be an attacking piece. I want to ask you what a good tournament looks like for Canada. I want to do so starting with this caveat, and this is something I think about a lot. 2 players on this official Canadian Copa America roster are over the age of 30. 15 are 25 or younger. First Copa America in the nation's history. What is realistic? Like, what should be the thought process for Canada fans?
Getting a point, like, at the World Cup group stage, right? Now, like, obviously much more than that. My first, like, I'm so mostly curious about how Alphonso Davies plays at left back, and I'm like these smaller international soccer teams. Like, it reminds you of David Alba for Austria when he was in his prime. Like Alphonso Davies at club level is a left back. He's one of the best left backs in the world. When you're with Canada, I loved him as the wing back in that system under John Herdman, and that it gave him more flexibility. So I was very, very curious going into this window or the two friendlies. And welcome to the job, Jesse Marsh. You know, France, Netherlands, and Argentina. Good luck. Meet all your players and get going. But yeah, for me, like, why not come here and think you can be competitive? And I'm certain that they do. Peru and Chile and Argentina, that's not easy, obviously. But why can't they get a couple results against Peru and Chile? We'll see what they look like against Argentina tonight, but I don't think that that's the measuring stick for this group at this tournament. What they need is to hopefully get out of the group stage, and I wouldn't call it an abject failure if they don't, but if they don't look competitive, then I would, right? Like, so it's fluid for me. A lot of these things, I don't go super binary and like they have to do this or it's a failure, but that's kind of where I'm at. What about you as our resident Canadian without Josh Cloak on this team? Like, what where is your head at with this team and this tournament?
I've got my Canada shirt on. I think you're right. I think the binary part is tough, which is like, I think it's a fair expectation to say get out of the group, in that Peru and Chile are both teams that are worse than the teams they were in a World Cup group with, where they were competitive and couldn't get over the line. And they are also teams that you will have to beat in the World Cup that you are hosting. So it's fair to say that you should be able to get results there. It's fair to say that you drew France in France 0-0 2 weeks ago, and that playing in the U.S. against Peru and Chile, which are two of the teams with the way that this group got drawn, that won't have massive crowds behind them, like it is as neutral a site as you're going to get, that it's fair to say that you can do enough to get out of the group. And if you do that, by the way this tournament got drawn, groups A and B are separated from C and D. Group B is the worst group by far. It's Mexico, Ecuador, Jamaica. Those are the teams you're talking about. So if that does happen, I think that's a whole nother conversation, which is like, can you steal a game there? But I think it's fair to say that getting out of the group is the key. But I do think there's a way in which you don't, and you come out of this positive.
Yeah.
You come out of this and say, we learned a lot about the way this team should set up. These players have learned a lot. But like, I had a Canadian friend text me this morning and say, I feel worse than I did against Belgium in the opener because it's Argentina. And I think that's fair, except at that moment, we didn't know how the Canadian players would react because we had never seen them against an opponent like that in a setting like that. 2 years on, all of these players are World Cup veterans. Like, most of this group was there, and they've been together a little bit longer. A lot of these guys have progressed. The soccer things that are interesting, and I think why Alphonso Davies now is a full left back makes sense. You have more athleticism at center back. Instead of Steven Vittoria, you've got Moise Bombito. That is like the two ends of the spectrum to cover for space for him, as well as in central midfield. You went from maybe Sam Piet to Ismail Kone as Steven Eustachio's partner. So I think you can cover for Davies more, where he can attack from that left back spot. He can float. He can find the game at times, and you can still cover for him. Maybe against Argentina a little bit tougher, but in general, I think that's part of the idea. And the other idea is he is world class at this thing. Why take him away from it? I thought he was fine at the World Cup. The PK sucks. That's a tough moment, but like, I thought he was fine. I thought he created chances. I thought he was on the ball often enough. I thought he was dangerous. You saw the goal he scores against Real Madrid. Like, he can play higher up the field and be good, but when you give him a runway, he's world class. So why not try and do that? And I think it makes a ton of sense. I think it goes with the talent that the team has of like Miller and Tejan Buchanan are better than your other options at the back. So get them on the field with Davies rather than instead of. And I think there should be a lot of hope. Like, I think Canada fans should come in hopeful. I do think this is a big moment tonight in that I talk a lot with this team about winning like the public back. They did a lot of that qualifying for the World Cup. The CSA has lost a lot of that because of like the insane stuff they've gone through and battling the team and battling the women's team and not honoring the gold medal. Like, all the things they've done incorrectly, everyone's watching tonight. So like, you put in a tough 1-1 and like, you now from here until the summer of 2026, when that World Cup kicks off, like, you are heroes in all of Canada, and that's a huge chance.
I'm so juiced. I wanted you to keep going for like 15 minutes straight. I loved that. I'm so ready to, dude. I'm gonna go buy a Canadian shirt. That sounded awesome. I'm in.
Let's go. Nike finally made them one instead of not having one made for the World Cup because they weren't prepared for them to get there. I said it, I think, on Tuesday's show. Like, there's a chance they lose 5-1 and there's a chance they win 2-1, and I wouldn't be shocked either way. I would be very.
I'd be shocked if they won 2-1.
Yeah,
I would be. I'm gonna go out on a limb here.
I'd be surprised if they get ripped open. One of the things that's tough is just Jesse obviously took over recently, so his style is not fully imprinted. Losing by a not a lot might be the reason you get out of the group. Like the difference in a 4-team group of the top 2 teams getting out might be how much you lose to Argentina by. And it's your first game, so you don't know what Peru and Chile are going to do. And so, like, if you are down 2-0, there has to be a thought process at some point of, like, do you close things up and try and hit on the counter and get a free kick or get something like that out there? The one big player, and more, I think, even than Alphonso Davies, that needs to show up is Jonathan David. We talk about him over and over. His numbers for club are fantastic. His play for club are fantastic. It's not that he hasn't scored for Canada. He has not been good. There are a lot of attacks that die at his foot. He does not play quick enough in this team where I think he's trying to do too much. He has to find his level here because their team is not deep enough to cover for him not being one of the best goal scorers in France. Like, that's what you're talking about. And then you go and look at him for this team, and he has been nowhere near that. And Kyle Larin has carried the attack at times. That's not the way this should be set up.
No, I completely agree with you there. That I feel like Jonathan David, he's padded his goal stats with some of the minnows that they've played, and again, hey, goals all count the same, except he needs a big tournament here with the Canadian national team. Jesse Marsh already said he's going to take penalties, which, hey, that could help. That's a boost, right? So, I don't know. I don't have anything more to say other than you're completely right, and I think that he's going to be one of their X factors because I trust what Alphonso Davies is going to bring. But if there's not one of the attackers that are really going to step up, and I think like Eustachio is one of my favorite players to watch on this Canadian national team. I think that you know what you're going to get from. I think he's going to be very good and it's going to be class. But the difference, the X factor type of player, if we want to do some WFAN Sports Talk Radio, who's your X factor in this tournament? It's got to be Jonathan David because he has a delta between his top form and bottom form is very large. And saying that he's the X factor too is a sign of respect of we know how good he can be. Mm-hmm. And if he is really, really good, like if they finish second in this group and then play Ecuador or Mexico, like I'd favor them to get to the semifinals. And again, that I reserve the right to change it if they look awful as they're still trying to get their feet under Jesse Marsh and get everything going. But like Jesse Marsh, one thing that we know about him is his motivation and the way that he can kind of get a group together. So even if it's just vibes, no tactics, that works on the international stage too. So I'm not too worried, but we'll see.
Herdman tried that, and they weren't that far off to open up the World Cup. Like, they came out on the front foot, and they were the better team in the start of all 3 of their games. But then they exposed themselves and opened themselves up. The hope is Jesse has that extra 10% tactically that is able to keep them alive. It's going to be fascinating. Reminder, Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia in the opening game of the World Cup in the group stage. They went on to win the whole thing.
Why not us?
So, exactly. Why not for Canada? So that game going down tonight. We'll, of course, have your reaction in the weekend review coming up on Sunday or Monday out for you. And let's talk U.S. now. 6 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday against Bolivia. That one's down in Dallas, I think at AT&T Stadium. So it'll probably be half full, maybe 3/4 with that gigantic stadium in Bolivia, which is just the most random team. So the stat I found is they've won 2 competitive games outside of La Paz since 1994.
Oh, my God.
One was against U.S. in 1995 Copa America, so they feel comfortable with this matchup. And the second one was against Ecuador, I think, in the 2015 Copa. So they haven't won a road qualifier since 1994 World Cup qualifying. They have only won 1 game at Copa America against the South American squad. Like, this is the bottom of the barrel in South America. So it's must win for the U.S. Let's start with a little lineup stuff. Like, lineup comes out an hour before the game. What's the position you're focused on, or what's the name you want to see?
First, I mean, I could lay out if you want to dive into Bolivia, their tactics and everything. I know that you're locked into that. If you just want to monologue for 15 minutes, I could lay out. That was most of what I had. I kind of let it rip right out the gate. No, I mean, it's center forward, and like again, we've been having the same conversation since World Cup qualifying for 22, and we thought we had it completely solved and done with Balogun coming in, and that's still probably the answer. But he hasn't really taken that. If Josh Sargent was fit, I think he'd be the starter, and I think that would be on merit. From everything that and even from speaking to people that's why it's so sad, these injuries that Sargent has had. Like, he did everything he could to try to get back, and I think it's a win that he's even on this roster, because even as, a week before it was announced, I was talking to a couple people, and they were like, yeah, probably not. Like, and it's sad, it sucks, like, who knows, right? And then he's on the roster, so he's doing everything he can, and I think I would love to see a fully fit Josh Sargent playing number 9 in this tournament. So I don't know if they're going to go Pepe or Balogun. I assume that they would just play it safe and go with Balogun, but Pepe off the bench. This is a good game to get right in for the attackers, particularly at center forward. If Balogun and or Pepe can get on the scoring sheet against Bolivia, again, this is the group stage game that I have the least juice on, probably almost tied with Panama, because we've seen that game 1,000 times. We know where it goes right, we know where it goes wrong, everything else. But the Uruguay game is most important. I probably start Balogun in that one, again, depending on the form of these two forwards, because you're going to need more dynamism in space, more... I guess that one little moment. Like, I think Ricardo Pepi makes more sense for Bolivia, but if I had to guess, it'd be Bolivia. It'd be Berhalter starting Balogun.
I agree with you on Sargent, but I don't know that it happens. For me, Bolivia specifically, I'm going to look at central midfield and just say, like, don't risk Tyler in a game like this. You don't need him, and it should be Reina in central midfield in this type of matchup where you need to create chances, and should probably be Musa as well.
Yeah, sure, but, like, at some point, why risk? Okay, like, we're at a tournament, man. Like, why risk
Bolivia.
him? I understand, but, like, dude, if he can't start, then he can't start. And yeah, like, there's injury risk to playing players in games, but, like, guess what? Like, we're playing games, man. Like, do we just put him in bubble wrap until the Uruguay game? Like, I think that's silly.
I can understand some of that, but he's played 4 games in the year. Like, if you got a limit on what you get from him, I don't need it against Bolivia. Also, I don't even know that he helps you in the way you want. Like, I think Bolivia is a game in which it looks more like what we've seen in Nations League semifinals, which the U.S. has struggled in to break down Honduras and Jamaica and all those types of things. So I think playing Reina centrally, I think having Musa, who you can play out through at the base of that midfield, I think a lot of that makes sense, whether he's healthy or not, and I wouldn't even risk him. Otherwise, I think it's the center forward conversation, and that's it. Pulisic's going to score goals. He has to, and that's what this team's built on.
I was going to say, let me throw a hypothetical that this is a waste of time, because I think there's 0% chance of this happening. But against a team like Bolivia, you think you're going to dominate possession, you're going to dominate chances, everything else. You play Weah at right back, Adams at number 6, so he kind of drops in as just a halfback. Just you shield the center backs all game, you try to put out fires in transition. And you tell Robinson and Weah, get forward as much as you want on both sides at the same time. So you have the width on both flanks. You have somebody who is elite in defensive transition for when that breaks down, and if you feel like you're being too adventurous, and then you can keep Gio Reyna he plays in the inverted slot while Way is overlapping the whole time. I would love to see that. I think that'd be fun as hell. I think there's 0% chance that that's what we see.
I think there's 0% chance as well. If it was me and I did it, I would just play Weah at right back without any of the other stuff and say, like, we don't really need a true defensive right back here. He's played in similar positions, and I would start Haji Wright on the wing, quote unquote,
as
like a second forward, and then I'd still play Reina and Musa and Weston McKennie in central midfield. So I'm here for it. I think Tim Weah can do anything. He's like the elite Christian Roldan player of, like, you put him anywhere, he'll figure it out. He'd probably play center back for this team and at a decently high level. But also you want to get him near a goal, which I understand as well. So that's our little breakdown there for the Bolivia game.
Super locked in for Bolivia and what they're gonna, the problems they might pose. We're ready for it.
Super locked in. If you're still listening, feel free, tweet at me, DM, go into the Patreon, chat with us, join the Patreon, and go on to Discord, and let us know if you want a little post-game show on Sunday, because clearly going to be watching the game, so I will be around and might jump on to chat with everyone online as well. We'll have the weekend review coming out as a pod as early as we can on Monday morning, potentially late Sunday night, and then we come back into our full shows. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, live 2 p.m. Eastern time. Tom with me on Tuesday and Thursday. Jordan with me on Wednesday. As the transfer window gets closer, as games continue to happen, and of course, covering all this international soccer consistently for you We've got the Olympics around the corner for both the men and the women. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be an interesting one to watch. Tom, anything you want to leave us on? Any big
I love. No, I'm gonna say for people incentivized to be watching live when you can. I just laughed at a comment in the chat. Oh shit! Didn't realize the gun show was in town. Laughing my ass off. That's fair.
People are loving the no sleeves from you. It has been most of the commentary. I did hear someone say that on my side it's probably suns out, buns out, but the camera angle's too high to see it. And listen, when you got legs like mine, you gotta show them off as much as humanly possible. Wait. We actually are not ready to be done. We are starting a new segment every Thursday, which I forgot about, and we're doing it right now. What's your Rec League review of this week? How have you done?
My game is tonight at 8:10. I played twice last week, 2 easy dubs, including against. I show up for my second game last week, and it's like a bunch of young guys. It's like clearly kids that are just graduating. Like it's like, oh my god, they're gonna really run the hell out of us. And I was going into that game after a crazy long day. It was our first show. I broke like 15 different pieces of news. And I was jokingly like, I feel bad for the first person who ends up on a 50-50 with me. A kid on the other team walks up to me and goes, hey, Tom, like, what's up? I was like, what's going on? And it was a very kind young man who I've given career advice to before and somebody that I like a lot. I hadn't seen him in person. And I was like, oh, my God, I'm gonna accidentally just blow this poor kid up. And he's going to be like, what the hell, dude? Anyway, thank God I didn't. We won. He played really well. I was impressed. But that's how it went. And then we'll see what happens tonight. What about you?
I bounced back on Tuesday night, first game I've played of my season because I've missed so far. We played the team of 24-year-olds who are all in really good shape. We lost 3-1. The referee came up to me post-game and said, you played fantastic tonight. So
I thought he was going to say, yeah, you can't come back. You're suspended next week.
I'm just throwing that out there. As someone who played center back in a game where we lost 3-1, feels good to get some commentary like that. We struggled to play through the pressure early. Once we went down 2-0, we dominated the game. We made it 2-1. We had a few cleared off the line. The other team decided that they wanted to score late. So this guy hits a hero ball to the far post. We have no offside in my league because it's 9v9.
Yeah, man.
And
so 9v9 is terrorism, by the way. That's crazy to me.
Especially as a center back. So this guy takes it down, long touch, winds up for a huge shot on my keeper. So I step in and clear it away. Comes through the shot, goes knee to knee with me. Goes down in like a heap. And it's kind of doing the like yelling thing and being like, apologize to me. And it's like, my tackle was clean. You made the mistake. Also, there's like 30 seconds left in this game that you're winning 3-1. Why are you going in on goal right now? And now I'm walking around with a bruised knee. So just so you know, I put my body on the line for the win, even though it wasn't going to happen. It was our first game like that. I like the squad, though. I feel good. And we are going to do this for you every single Thursday because I play Mondays and Tuesday nights. Does yours just float?
Wednesday, Thursdays.
Wednesday, Thursdays. Okay, cool. So then every Thursday, you're going to get your update here, right here. Okay, that's all for us here on Soccerwise. We're going to go watch Italy play Spain right now and see what happens there. We're excited for Copa America. We're excited for everything going on. And we're excited for all of you watching us, both live and later on. So thank you for being a part of this. Hope you enjoyed it. This has been Soccerwise MLS edition, and we will talk to you all